I guess I should talk about August 3rd. Now, this is coming up, the Elora Festival at St. John's Church. So is this your first time at the festival or not?
Yes.
Yes.
That's what I thought. So, but I'm sure you've played in churches before.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it about the space and resonance of a church that speaks to you? How does it differ from playing on stage?
I'd say, well, I think a church, especially with flute, I think flute, if I'm being honest, of the three instruments probably works best in a church because it just fills the air and with a clarity but what's so neat playing with the different instruments is that depending on what space we're in, you're going to have a very different experience. So in this case, it's going to have more reverb probably than we're used to playing on many stages.
Right.
But then we can work with that with our music to make use of that because that's also a very fun thing to experience as a performer. When you're somewhere, for example, in a dry environment, Sean, he just totally gets so frustrated because the flute really relies on echo and reverb.
Right, it has nowhere to go, basically.
Yes, and I think the violin and cello, because I don't know the exact scientific reasons, but because of the box, like the reverb and resonance, a lot of that is created within our box, so we get more help from our instrument. So, yeah, it's really fun. Frustrating at first, but ultimately fun as you work out how to balance the dynamics and even the speed. Like somewhere like in a church, if you play too fast, it gets garbled up. So you just have to kind of change your playing style. But it is a treat to play in a place that I hear that the acoustics are incredible. So
they are.
We are, and my brother actually he's a big brother, and he lives in Toronto, and he brought his little brother to Elora a couple weeks ago, and he didn't know I was playing in the festival, and he's like, Maria, you have to go to this place. It's incredible. And I was like, yeah, I'm going there in a month. And it was really, he just raved about it. He said we should stay there for days because it's so incredible.
It is. It's very cool. It's got a lovely vibe to it, Elora. It always has. And the festival is great. And St. John's Church is one of their one of the two premier venues. So do you want to talk a little bit about the concert? You're probably going to be doing Circle the Sea. So selections from your CD, would that be correct?
Yes, that's exactly right. They also have cliff diving that I want to mention in Elora that I don't know if we have time to do it, but it looks really, really, really awesome, and I'm dying to go do it.
You got to watch that. Yeah. Watch that gorge and watch the rapids. But yeah, you're right. It's great, and there's lots of great restaurants there. Oh my God, it's so cool.
And in terms of playing in the church, I mean, from my end, playing flute in a church, that's like a dream come true. I absolutely love it, and we're also really sensitive to each other. So as we go through this program, the audience is going to hear a lot of times where even if we don't do it physically, which we often will do, like one person will move out to take a solo, but you're going to be able to hear us pass the lines literally from one to the other. And so in a piece like the most traditional piece we play by Haydn, it's a trio, the way, when you were asking what we do to rehearse it, we sometimes will close our eyes, or even if our eyes aren't closed, we're literally passing it to each other, and whoever takes the line, we look at that person, and it's like we're literally doing volleyball with the theme so that we follow that person. And in a church, it's so fulfilling because we have infinite, like we can fill up the space dynamically and bring it way back if we want, and then also in terms of shading, we really do a lot to, like, I'll put the flute intentionally under or into Maria's sound of the violin, so it's not like a penetrating flute, but it's part of a texture. We really play with that, and I think in the church that's, it's just the best place to do that. So we start with Ghost Ship. This is a piece Maria wrote maybe about 2 years ago now, and it starts with these really, really quiet sound effects and all the instruments, and that's why it's really fun to start a program with that, because it really leaves people wondering, like, what's happening here, and then it builds up into this great climax. And then from the same area of the world, we have Sounds of Scandinavia, which is basically 3 folk tunes strung together, almost like a medley, but with really different feels for each one.
There's very versatile.
And then we have a few. Oh, sorry, go ahead again.
It'll be a very versatile program. Are you doing some Irish music as well, I am guessing?
We certainly are, yeah. We have one piece called Bach in Ireland, which is a 6-movement piece, and maybe I'll let Maria tell you a little bit about that.
Okay.
Well, Bach in Ireland ties a solo work by Bach for each of our instruments with a corresponding Irish tune with the same rhythm. And the idea for this came to me because I was visiting my grandma in Ireland and met this guy who started bringing me to pubs in Belfast to play. I got a crash course in fiddling through that. And as I sat there and listened to people play, I realized that regardless of their training, if they're beginners or professionals, they sounded so natural and as though they were making up the tune on the spot. And that was something I felt was lacking in the performance of classical music as a student at the time, especially Bach's solo works, because they're so difficult that we just sound like kind of like we're just happy to just get through it. And I wanted it to have the lilt of Irish music. And some of that does come from bowings, because in Irish music you don't set bowings. So I kind of adopted that rule with my subsequent classical playing, where I'll just make up bowings as I go, because then you can create interesting grooves and lilts and not get thrown off if your bow goes the wrong way or something. So based on that, I thought, man, if I tie some Bach together with some Irish music, then maybe one can influence the other. And in each of the Irish tunes, I've incorporated actual sections of Bach. So it's a really fun piece to play, and we have like drumming on the cello, clapping, like the audience can join us, and it kind of builds, each movement builds to a really crazy Irish real climax. And so that's kind of one of our favorites to play.
That sounds incredible. What part of Belfast did you go to visit your grandmother? Or what part of Ireland, I should say?
Well, my grandmother, my dad's from Northern Ireland.
Okay.
So she lived in Bangor.
Oh, I know Bangor because I used to live in Belfast. I know Bangor because I used to live in Belfast.
Oh, you did? Well, I adore there. And so, yeah, I guess when I went to go visit my grandma, my father was taking care of her, and he's extremely gregarious, as many Irish people are, and he walked into this stained glass shop and saw some violins hanging in the back, and he said to the guy, "Oh, you're a violinist?" And the guy's like, "Yeah." And my dad said, "Well, my daughter's coming to visit, and she plays violin." And the guy said, "Well, that's nice," because people are always coming in and telling him that, because he's called, I think, the Protestant fiddler, because there's so few Protestant fiddlers that he gets that title. So everyone's trying to introduce their kid to him. So he's like, whatever. So I came to visit, and I played him some of my Japanese and like tango tunes and stuff, and he's like, wow, this is so different from what he's like, let me bring you along. So I just started learning tunes sitting in the pub, and he'd just drive me everywhere. So I kind of played all over Northern Ireland with him, because he's kind of a local celebrity. And it was just, I swear, the education I got there was as good as anywhere else. And I just also, I think so many principles of performance and rhythm and ornamentation, I really swear by them till this day. As a player, it really changed the way I viewed music. So this piece is kind of a tribute to that, and I'm so lucky that, Sean and Nan Cheng are just up for trying anything. So when you're like, yeah, can you drum here? Can you do this or that? I have a piece where Sean's just playing in harmonics, like for a whole section, and it's really difficult on flute, and he gets kind of winded and runs out of breath, but he's a trooper and kept practicing it and really plays it beautifully. So
in terms of what Maria was saying about building and building for Bach in Ireland, that we put that right before intermission, because usually people are just exhausted even hearing it at the end or something. So it's really it just builds and builds straight through the end, and it's really fun for that reason. And I guess I just want to say that the people who really seem to connect most with our music, it's people who don't want music as background, but people who want music as the foreground, like for some new sort of experience they're craving. Say again?
The center of their life, you mean, rather than wallpaper?
Yeah, and they're just out there looking for that new experience. Those people really like our music, and I hope that anyone in the Elora area will certainly come looking for us on that day and listen to us.
I'm sure they will. Will your CDs be there for sale too?
Absolutely.
Okay, and I know you guys are so busy, do you have another CD in the works, maybe? Or no, not at this point?
I hope so. The last one took about 2 years, but I'm hoping we can do one in less time than that. It was a lot of money and a lot of time, but
we're we're extremely ruthlessly perfectionistic, so it ends up being a very slow process. So my goal and my dream is that our next CD is a live CD, because then maybe it will move much faster. But that's extremely difficult to pull off, especially when you don't want to put something out that's anything less than really
Perfect.
perfect. Yeah. So we'll
Well,
see. We'll see on that one.
that is so great. Well, I'd like to thank you both for taking the time to chat with me. This has been
Thank you so much.
Oh, I wanted to add one more thing, if it's
yes.
possible.
Yeah.
I realized, because I've been writing I got a grant from Canada Council for the Arts to write music this year, and I was writing my final report, and I realized some of the pieces that we're going to be playing were made possible because of that. And I just want to say this shout out, because being a Canadian, like, I think that made such a difference in my musical career, because the way the government supports the arts compared to the U.S. is incredible, and
Yeah.
so many things are made possible by that. So I feel extremely grateful to have grown up there and had the great teachers I did, and also great programs like Canada Council for the Arts.